they're going to have to work hard to appeal to gamers because gamers, they don't appear to be that interested in blockchain technology fusing with the video game world.
So you're right. The history of blockchain and gaming has not always been a marriage made in heaven, and frankly, it hardly ever has been. For one, crypto and gamers got off to a pretty bad start because, especially during the heady days of 2021, when crypto was going through the roof and everybody was trying to mine Bitcoin and Ether. Back then, Ethereum was still a proof of work blockchain. Miners around the world were racing to buy what's known as GPUs, graphics processing units, which are used to, in particular, mine Ethereum back in the day, but they are sort of like the brains, the guts in computers that gamers use so that they can run their Fortnites and League of Legends and so on and so forth. And because of how much mining interest there was in buying these GPUs, the prices just went through the roof, which automatically kind of got them off the wrong foot when it came to gamers. Second, a lot of gamers, especially the ones that pay hundreds or thousands of dollars a year, they're not interested in doing this to make money. Most of them have jobs. They're in it for the fun, for the diversion, for the challenges, for some of the camaraderie, but they're not in it just to make money. And too many games, and one game that came up a lot in my reporting, Axie Infinity, sort of a battle play game, focused too much on the gamification, or excuse me, the financialization of gaming, known as GameFi. And again, that's like kind of antithetical to the gaming ethos. And one of the things that I know Sui and the team at Miston is trying to do is find a way to make games that are appealing to play regardless of whether or not they are run off of Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure or a blockchain. And that's really the challenge that they're trying to face. They're onboarding dozens of games from many gaming development studios that are Web 2 development studios that predate blockchain. But that's really going to be the challenge. And some of the gaming analysts that I spoke with are very skeptical that is actually going to be successful.
Well, Steve, you've been in this industry for quite some time, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of CEOs and founders come and go. I'm curious as
Mhm.
to why you think Evan Ching and Sui were worth the story.
That's a good question, Rosemary. And the story was interesting for me to follow for a couple of reasons. One, again, the broader trend right now is sort of crypto is still receding, and much of the attention that remains is going towards Ethereum. And in particular, aside from just the idea that Ethereum is the largest blockchain by far, with the exception of Bitcoin, and it has a preponderance of developer activity, user activity, I think Ether and Ethereum also got a bit of a break when they were not mentioned. Ether was not mentioned in any of the recent SEC lawsuits that were launched against exchanges like Binance and Coinbase, despite the fact that the SEC chair Gary Gensler has kind of gone out of his way to avoid stating whether or not he believes Ether to be a security. So um, all of that is there. And then again, um, Chang, just by nature of his background too, was pretty fascinating to me. I mean, he grew up in Taiwan. He left the country when he was 16 to avoid compulsory military service. He joined his father in South Africa to help run a textile business. He applied and got into college in rural Ohio without even a high school diploma. I asked him if he said he tricked the admissions officials, I guess, in that school to letting him in. He said no, but he didn't really hide that he didn't have a degree. But he said they just probably did not look at his application close enough. Says he graduated with a dual degree, 4.0 GPA, and he called it very boring. He eventually ended up at Apple, where he worked with a couple of famed computer scientists and built a very famous open source tool that's sort of the backend for a lot of devices that we use today called LLVM, which kind of helps translate computer code into machine code so devices know what instructions to run. And then he got to Libra, which, for those listening that kind of don't go back a couple of years in crypto, Libra was a very famous and maybe perhaps notorious failed project launched by Facebook and about a dozen other companies to try to create a blockchain based decentralized currency scheme. And it just elicited so much regulatory backlash that it never got off the ground. He was actually the head of research for that program, and many of the other leaders at Miston Labs and Sweet are all part of we're all part of Libra. So all of that background together like trying to build something out of the ashes of what really was a failed project, despite the fact that one of the signature elements of Sui, the programming language called Move, was actually developed at Facebook. And it was open sourced at Facebook, which is why they're able to use it. So maybe there's also a bit of a redemption story in this as well, that at least one core component, that the guts, the DNA of what was supposed to be Libra, perhaps it finds a new life in Sui.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Steve.
Great. Thanks, Rosemary.